You're listening to Lab Out Loud, science for the classroom and beyond. I'm your co-host Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartell. Lab Out Loud is a podcast about teaching science done by, well, two science teachers. It's all about science education.
That's right. And our guest today is all about science education too, because her work as a scientific illustrator helps bring, difficult concepts in science to life by translating them into visually appealing art that you might see on the cover of a scientific journal.
Welcome to the show, Mara. And first of all, tell us what your job is.
So my name is Marushchenko, and I'm scientific illustrator. Basically, I'm an artist who is creating images for scientists and any kind of scientific illustration art.
How did you get that job? What are the requirements to be a scientific illustrator?
That's the question we often ask because of our science teacher listeners who often pass this on to students. I mean, in textbooks, they'll talk about like that career path and how they got there. So if you're thinking about like that future student that might be interested in that, kind of explain to them how you got to where you are.
So for me, it was more accident because I do have only art background. I know that a lot of people are studying. A lot of university has department for future scientific illustrators. But for me, it was just accident. I have only artist background. I graduated in Russia many years ago, classical art degree. And my grandma was artist, and I just met a scientist. We was talking. He asked me if I can do some simple images for him. I didn't decline because I was already had a job. I was in the fashion industry, and I was not really interested in science back then. So I met his professor a couple months after, and I was actually back then I was out of my job because I moved to States. And he asked me to do a cover for him. And his professor named Sergey Minko. I politely declined. I said, I'm not interested in scientists. And he said, you don't have a job, so you don't have nothing to do. It's really hard to say no for a scientist. I don't think they take no for answer. And it was funny because I started doing that, and I was really interested how scientists are passionate in their job, because when you met pretty much anyone out art industry, people are kind of don't really love to talk about their job. They're like, oh, it's nothing interesting. When you meet artists, we can talk about.
Really?
Most of people, I think, yes. For example, for me, maybe it was just my experience. When you met artists can talk for hours about their job. We laugh, brag about art and stuff, and. It was the same for a scientist. He started to explain me his research to me, and I finally agreed to do a cover. It was a advanced functional material journal, and it was accepted. And I actually loved it. I love just working with scientists. It was so easy, to be honest, comparing to any fashion industry, photography, or anything else. And I did one cover, it was accepted, then another scientist contacted me because he saw my cover on the magazine, and I just started doing that. So, but for me, it was accident. Most people has to go through university and study, and I was lucky to know scientists who can explain me how I can draw it, because I don't have scientific background. So if you don't have scientific background, basically you talk with a scientist more like scientists explaining to a child, to a 3 years old, because even they're right now it's much more easy. Back then, when they need to explain me any how cancer cell is looking, it was mostly like you explain for a child. This is a shape of it's a bumpy shape. This is nanoparticles look like just teeny tiny pieces of something. But
is it possible that is actually helping your art, because you're not as a teacher, sometimes I would think if I could just unlearn what I'm trying to teach for about 5 minutes so I could put myself in the shoes of my audience, the students, then I could maybe do a better job of then trying to, explain the concept or understand their, preconceptions and then be able to present it. Is that sometimes that that lack of science background an asset when you are creating this art?
Yeah, I think definitely. Between artists, we have this joke: if you want to be a famous artist and create really important job, never attend university, because university
Sure.
gonna shape you in some different
Yeah.
way. They're gonna teach you how to do it right, and you're not gonna express yourself after that, because it's really hard to express yourself when you have this knowledge. So I think, yes, for me, like, I don't have this like a shell, and I don't have this cage, because like most and I can see it on some images. Most people who like has scientific background, they're afraid of creating something crazy. They kind of, because they know it's not scientifically correct. And if I don't know it's scientifically correct, I don't really care about this. I'm mostly caring about like if it's attractive, if image are like kind of eye-catching, if I love colors and stuff like that. And for some people with scientific background, it's complicated because they want to do everything step by step, proper scientific images, and sometimes it just like it's look scientifically correctly, but it doesn't look attractive.
So you have to have a balance there, right? So then you actually described this in a recent tweet that you talked about the design in a cover image. Is that more important in eye-catching design or scientific
yes,
accuracy?
I think for cover images, it's definitely more like supposed to be more artistic, because like if it's going to be super complicated scientific illustration, it's going to freak some people out. It's just, like if you scientific illustration for medicine books, it's not gonna, you cannot create something from your hand, like EI is doing like
Sure.
6 fingers, it's fine. No, like, but when you're doing some abstract stuff for covers, like it's supposed to be just, like make science not only about science, but make it like really looks easy for looking easy for just regular people. So that's what I'm trying to do, explain that scientists, it's not something, because when you talk to regular people, science, they freak out when they hear science. They like, when they met scientists, they're like absolutely sure that scientists, it's something like from this episode Big Bang Theory, really weird people, like don't know how to communicate and stuff. So what we are trying to do, we try to explain that science are beautiful, and it can be beautiful, and it's supposed to be beautiful, especially on the covers of magazine. It's not supposed to be everything throwing on the covers with some letters and with some formulas and stuff like that.
So you started off as an artist, trained as an artist, you said. What about before that? Like maybe when you were a child, you got art inspiration from family? You had family members that were artists you spoke about?
Yeah, my grandma was artist, and her brother was artist as well, but he died when he was young. And my mom, she's really talented, but my grandma was absolutely against my mom becoming artist. She was never allowed her to go to art school, because my grandma believed that it's really hard path to make money like an artist, and she never allowed my mom, which is like really sad, but I can understand it. But so like I knew I want to be artist since I was like a really small child, because only I knew only how to draw. I didn't like to do anything else. And if I even like met my school, like where I was school friends, all they can remember about me, like I was drawing on the math classes, because I'm actually horrible. Like if you ask me anything like out of art stuff, I'm horrible. I barely graduate school thanks to my sister. I was horrible in school.
Thanks to your sister, she helped you graduate, or
yeah,
didn't
I have a
help you
twin
graduate?
sister, and we're not identical, but we was in the same class, which I'm really, really thankful, because I know a lot of schools doing that when they separate twins, which for my, like, it's horrible. I honestly believe it's like a torture.
Yeah.
So she has to study for 2, because I was horrible in math, geometry, physics. I was so bad, and she was actually on any exams, she has to pass exam for me and like pass it to me. So I was like copywriting her exams. So that's how I graduated school, because I was I was bad, and I was not lazy, but I never could understand. And then I was accepted in University of Art in Russia, and it was amazing. I finally start
Uh-huh.
feel like a person because everyone like who I was talking to was failing in math as well, was horrible in school, and I was actually one of the best students in art school because
You
you
found
don't
your
need
people.
math. Yeah, you don't need mathematics or geometry to draw. And I was blessed that my parents allowed me to do what I want, which is like
Yet the work I see like on your website, for example, the animations, some of the designs, they seem like there would be a lot of math going on there. Does this just mean you learned a lot in the
I don't need
background?
to calculate. I don't need to do all this like
Uh-huh.
all this crazy stuff. And as soon as they start to put some letters with the numbers, I just lost it in school because
Uh-huh. Sure,
it
sure.
was
Okay.
so bad for me. But like in this 3D program, a lot of artists use this right now. They not actually pushing you to do all this geometry stuff for like
Well,
a
okay.
really crazy engineering stuff. We have
Uh-huh.
an engineer in our studio who can do that, like who can build a proper like technological stuff. He's engineer, so like for him it's easy. For me, no. I can do like some pretty stuff and simple stuff like a cell, but for
Uh-huh.
sure I'm not gonna even try to like do this. I don't know, like 3D printer. Sometimes we have to do some I don't know, even like manufacturing stuff. I'm not gonna do that because I'm probably gonna mess it up.
I see. Okay.
Ella, you have a studio, and so there's more than just you working on these covers now and on this art, correct?
Yes, a lot of people don't realize that I'm not actually alone. We started this studio. It was me and Alex, a scientist who asked me to do a first image, and I politely declined for him. We started it together. It was like more than 8 years ago, and now we have 8 people. We have 2 scientists. We have 1 engineer and a couple more artists who is working with me. So now
So
it's
I'm
more of us. I
I'm
mostly
sure it varies, but if we look at a particular cover, like how many people will be responsible for creating that image on some of the covers?
So most of the time, like scientists, so how it's working in our studio, I can explain how, I don't know how in other studios working, but
Uh-huh.
we have a scientist who is like when another scientist was article accepted, they contact us and our scientists communicate with them, and then they're explaining like a basic stuff like for kids for our team of
Uh-huh.
artists, and we decide who is going to do this cover. So like usually I decide who is going to do this cover because I know which cover gonna work in 2D, which cover gonna work in 3D, and I can see which style is going to be how, like which one style is going to be like more useful. So like most of the time all images are created by one scientist who is explaining it and one artist, and I
Uh-huh.
have a final word. So like all images which coming from our studio by with my name, I like have final say. Like I don't like this color, we're gonna change that. So even I didn't draw it from the beginning, I'm gonna make sure I like it.
So it's similar to like a newspaper. Like there's the final edits and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, but like we have really amazing artists, like they're really talented. So I'm not really, most of the time I don't need to, like push them or change
Sure.
something. But in my Twitter and Instagram for sure, I mostly post my stuff. So all these 3D covers,
Okay.
like it's my covers, like 2D covers mostly by another. His name is Lesia.
Ella, despite the fact that you came into this from an artistic end, I'm sure you've learned some science along the way. Has there been anything that's like really surprised you about how the world works or how life works because of how you've had to basically learn it through doing the art?
Oh, it's a good question. Never even think about that. For first 4 years, like all my useless scientific knowledge, gave me a giant hypochondria. I was basically, I was basically constantly, checking myself for cancer, especially for cancer.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah, because when you have this little knowledge and Google, you start
Uh-huh.
Googling stuff, and like it was a
Sure.
4 years of major hypochondria. Now I kind of, I think my family respect me more because I have like this, like I know about a lot of stuff which are not published yet because we're drawing for this cover. So I can
Oh,
talk to my
neat.
family like when of course when it's published, I can say like my family not reading scientific magazine, but I can say like proudly, oh, I know about this stuff because I read it and explain it, and I sound like really smart, which is
Mm-hmm.
surprising for them. Uh, don't really think like my word view is changed. No, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel much more smarter. I think maybe
Hmm.
for myself, but like when I'm gonna talk to scientists, I'm probably gonna be sitting quiet and not not try to make some any like smart topics. So for now, I think
Mm-hmm.
only hypochondria.
We'll be right back. Do you have any, I don't know, maybe advice for maybe students that were like you, for example, that weren't interested in the other subjects? Maybe that there's light out there for them to put their passions into work. Do you have any suggestions or any kind of advice for an aspiring artist out there? The student that is in our classrooms.
Uh, I don't know. Don't be afraid. I think don't first of all do not think it's gonna be easy job. A lot of
Ah.
people think it's like it's kind of you're not gonna do it for fun. It's not gonna be I'm gonna draw wherever I want. I feel like it. You're gonna be pushed to draw something specific, and there's space for to be creative, but not so
Mm-hmm.
much. So don't think you're gonna, just work regular hours. It's not gonna be regular hours. I don't remember me having any vacation for the last 7 years for sure. But it's fun for sure. Like it's kind of my advice if you want to do it for a future, like a career.
Yeah.
And it's amazing for artists. A lot of artists has this problem that you're gonna be forgotten really quickly. And when you're artist, you all the time feel like you're useless, you're not changing the world, you mean nothing, your painting's gonna be somewhere in the bathroom, you're lucky if it's gonna be in the pub. Scientific illustrators, you're gonna be something, you're gonna help, like even if you're gonna do only one article, only one cover, it's gonna
Huh.
be for future generation how you're gonna help people. And I think it's absolutely, for me it's mind-blowing that I did so many images for people who's created new drugs, people who was creating like a new treatment for cancer patients, and even like small published articles. It's just amazing that you feel really important. And I think this is like, even if it's really hard, if it's like a really hard path to go, oh, it's definitely paying off. It's definitely.
Do you think there's an increasing need for scientific
Oh, I can
art?
see it. I don't even think I can see it. Like when I started 8 years ago, honestly, covers journals was bad, especially scientific journals. Like you can see giant difference between like Nature Geographic. It was always amazing picture, and then you check any scientific covers, and it was a bad. It was like there was no artistic skills. It was basically just a proposal on the cover. Now more and more people are interested in scientific illustrator, more and more people with all this VR stuff. There's more and more people who want to study
Ah.
that, because like it's not only for covers. People think like you can do it only covers. No, like a lot of VR stuff, a lot of like not games, but you can see these museums and science and art museum where people are walking and can like touch all this heart and nerve system, and like it was obviously created by some artist.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I definitely agree with you. I think there is a need for better scientific art. And I think about that in textbooks, for instance. I think about that with a lot of different areas where we could definitely have a better appreciation. So have you ever been in a situation where, I think about like digital microscopy, for instance, where we can get a picture of something very, very small, but there are, let's just say there's complications with getting an image like that, or there are limitations with that. Do you ever get to a situation where you're like, I can do better?
You mean when they're taking some picture and they're like decide that they don't like how it's look and they want to create it in 3D?
Right. Or obviously, when we get to things that are so small, color is an issue. And so you need somewhat of an artist representation. We see this with space as well. When we're getting images in from some of our telescopes, they don't have a color associated necessarily. Some of that is an artistic decision on what it should look like. So do you think like you get to a point like, I can do better than the microscope in showing you what you should see?
A lot of times, like sometimes I like just a photo for some cell. It's look amazing like it is, but sometimes it's kind of like blurry. You cannot color it because resolution is like really low, like the best resolution you can get, but still gonna be low. It's gonna be like a really bad photograph stuff. So yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Are you given source material that is like you were told, or earlier you described like the scientist will describe the concept and all those kinds of things, but are you given some source imagery to augment or reproduce?
Sometimes scientists came like with idea how they want to create it. And this is a fight between artists and scientists because scientists sometimes has this absolutely crazy idea, like sometimes even readings like idea how they want to show it. Sometimes scientists came like, and you can do whatever you want. We have like, especially I think it's a chemistry stuff. I think it's like the easiest one. But sometimes it's like I can hear them talking about the most crazy I created. It's something like not relevant to or practically not relevant at all to our article. It's going to be dog in a rainbow with a forest. Some lightning on the background, which has really deep meanings, but you hardly can imagine this. And it's like everything thrown together. And sometimes you have to, push scientists. We're not going to draw that. You're not going to like how it's going to look. And there's like, because the most scientists has this problem. They really creative in their mind. But when you put it all together, it looks horrible. It looks bad. Like it's my sister all the time telling me like, like when I'm trying to draw, like in my head, everything is so beautiful. But as soon as I try to take a pen and draw it, I just don't know how to do it.
I can totally relate to that.
Most of scientists has this problem.
I have like an image in my head, but I can never get it to turn out to what I want.
Yeah, and in your head, it's always beautiful, like a dog, rainbow, lightning, New York City. I love when the people ask to create New York City on the background. And it's a fight between artists and scientists. Like you try to explain them, okay, what if we're going to try to, skip a dog, not going to do some you're going to do something like really basic, just something, one piece of something. No, obviously not a dog because dog is not related to chemistry most of the time.
Sure.
But it's a fight. And sometimes we can convince scientists, like especially when we provide like an example of our magazines and stuff. But sometimes we can't. Sometimes we have to draw this dog so they can see if they're going to love it. And sometimes they do love it. Sometimes
so
even the crazy
you give them what
idea.
they want.
Yeah.
Are there times where you give them what they want with your fingers crossed? Like, please don't pick this. Please don't.
Please do not put my name on it. Please. This is going to be, you can post it, but just don't tell that we created. No, we're going to do it in a beautiful way. But sometimes I hardly can agree with concept.
I'm looking at a cover right now that you posted on social media. It's Nature Nanotechnology, Mathematics at the Speed of Light. Do you recall that?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. It's blue and yellow. Yep.
Yeah, if I look at that picture, it looks very, maybe digital is the word I want to say. I guess my question is, how does that start? Does it start with a sketch Does it start on physical material, or is it straight always, or is it always on a computer, or is it, depends on the work?
Yeah, it depends on the work, but for this one, I can for me, it's working like that. Scientists explain me what their client want, and I immediately have it in my head how I want to show it. I immediately have all these colors, how I want to explain it, and I just started from really creating in 3D. So for
So
this
it
one,
was
for
never
sure.
that image never started on like scribbles on paper. Or,
No,
or
no,
anything like
not
that.
this
Okay.
one. No, not this one.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, and if I have something in my head, it's really hard to convince me to change it as well, especially when I love it. I send it to a client and he's like, I'm not sure this idea gonna work for us. And I'm like, but I'm sure it's working for me. I love it.
How often is the back and forth between the client and and your studio?
Oh, it can be months. It can be months. It can be not.
And there's a deadline though, right?
I love deadlines. Some people hate deadlines. Like some people.
Because that'll button it up. That'll button up the uncertainty, maybe.
Yes, because when you have a lot of time, when people contacting me and they have a 3 months or 4 months, I'm freaking out because I know for a fact we're gonna work for all 4 months because they're gonna change something. When they have deadline, it's okay, we have this point, we cannot go for a couple more months. So it's actually much more better to have deadline. Some artists hate it because it's easy have to work overnight. I prefer to have deadlines. I don't like this year commitment to one art.
Do you have a favorite that you can recall? Maybe a recent favorite or just an all-time favorite or something of one of the works that you did?
No, actually, people ask me this a lot, which was my favorite art. I have images that I'm more proud and images not less proud, but for example, when scientists pushed me to do that and I was not really convinced I have to do it this way, but they all like my childs. I try to do everyone, equally good. So that's why a lot of people, I don't like to know a name for university I'm working. And I don't like to connect with a client. A lot of clients, this is not a secret, but a lot of clients love to talk before because they think this personal connection is really good. It's really bad for me. And I all the time give this example for when you're cooking for yourself. It's always amazing. It's always good. You're doing your best. When the guests are coming and you're trying hard because you want to impress them, it's horrible. Everything is burned, it's salted, and something is raw. So I don't like to connect with clients because it's give me more. All people are the same. It's kind of abstract. You're just working for yourself. That's why I don't like to know people before I did the images. Usually I'm the last person who know which university I did this image or which professor I did this image. So it's when it's published, I can check and I'm like, this was MIT. Oh, this is interesting. I don't like to know before.
Well, it's going to inject bias otherwise, or yeah.
You're gonna
Brian
try
and I have
hard.
had many conversations about that, about learning too much about your students before you begin. Okay, well, if they can't pick a favorite, which I understand, they're all your children. What about a subject matter? Is there a subject matter, a field of science that you gravitate towards? I can't wait for the next chemistry one or the physics one or something like that?
It depends on the season, actually. Sometimes when you draw some biological stuff, when for example, during coronavirus, I was hoping it's going to be some chemistry or physics because I was so exhausted drawing all these cells. And soon as someone with chemistry article connect me, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be chemistry or physics. So when you create something for a long time, you actually really want something else. So that's why I'm kind of really lucky.
You like the challenge of something new.
It just gives you a fresh view. Because when you're drawing the same cell for over and over for 2 years of coronavirus, I was pretty sure I don't have any colors left. I created each possible way. I use all colors palette. I even start to draw them in a black and white style because I was like, I don't know what else I can show for after
It's like
2
a
years.
musician. After a while, you get sick of the set list, right? You
Yeah.
just kind of change it up. Or
So do you have any like field that you haven't broken into? Like I'm looking at you, geology or something. Like where do you need to branch out to?
I never did anything for archaeology, I think.
Oh, okay.
We actually do a lot of like, we did a couple images from NASA. So we cover even this field. I didn't do any for archaeology, I think, but everything else, I think we covered. We did,
good.
yeah, so.
Well, this has been fascinating. We always like hearing about careers that you might not think about as your standard like field in science, but obviously, as you said, this is an artistic field, but you work with scientists and you work alongside of them. You also work with them as clients. If you had someone that was interested in going to this field, before we let you go, what advice would you give them?
like what do they need to get into the field?
Sure.
Oh, please.
How do they get started if they want to become a scientific illustrator?
If you're not attending a school, because there is a lot of actually university who has like a scientific illustration department where they teach how to be illustrator for science. If you only have like a scientific background and you like a lot of people contacting me and like I'm PhD student, I want to be scientific illustrator, what I should do. I recommend you to attend art classes. Any kind of art classes, especially color, like know how to choose field colors. Because I can see most of the time that some color palette was chosen not by artists for sure, because some colors are really hard to combine. And I really hate magenta color. Like, don't use magenta for your articles for sure. If you creating anything like for yourself, don't use magenta ever. It's never working.
Why? What's wrong with magenta?
It just look odd because any magenta is really intense color, and any color you try to combine with this, it's not gonna work. Magenta gonna attract all attention. You're not gonna see anything else. You're gonna see only magenta.
So it's like the diva of colors. Basically.
It's not a diva, it's just weird colors. That's why people has to attend all these color classes, like which color are complementing, which are color not working together. So if like definitely go to some art classes, took some art classes. I don't mean like drink and draw, like wine classes. I mean like university classes when they're explaining basic stuff.
Drink and draw. Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense actually. These are all things that I don't feel. These are areas I feel like I should work on.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing more of your artwork in the future.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to our show. If you'd like to know more about this episode or any of our previous episodes, visit laboutloud.com. Lab Out Loud is produced by me, Dale Basler, and my co-host, Brian Bartell. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for Lab Out Loud, visit laboutloud.com/contacts. Thanks again.